Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Marcus Luttrell, Afghanistan targeting was, still in its infancy, is still a lot of human based at that point in time in Afghanistan. So there really wasn't a great targeting platform to go on, as we look for legacy targets and plan out some of that stuff. And as far as what the Rangers were doing, a lot of it we were just on TSTs, time sensitive target manning, for one platoon, and then the other was on CSAR, combat search and rescue. It was a basic standard Ranger taskings at that point in time. And we had just rotated off of the CSAR tasking onto the time sensitive target tasking. So we had just finished all the stand-ups for running through timelines and checks on all that stuff, and got the word that Marcus Luttrell's team was going to go out and do this Operation Red Wings. And as Rangers always do, we get enough information to have a conversation about it at the chow hall table. And so started talking with some of the recce guys, and they're they're briefing us because they've been following this a lot closer than like a rifle platoon has. It wasn't kind of in our wheelhouse as far as targets we were looking at, but it's stuff that recce had been looking at in areas to do some of their stuff. And they were like, we wouldn't do it this way, not 4 guys. No, we'd take a whole recce section, 12 guys, but we wouldn't do it without a rifle platoon in support, even if it was a 5K standoff between the two, because they can fight to us and we can fight to them, and it's a bigger footprint on the ground. Do we run the risk of spoiling the target? Yes, but on the other side of it, we as Rangers, we're always going to bring everything in the kitchen sink to bear on an objective to turn the odds in our favor. And did they do anything wrong with the way they did it? No. They made judgment calls along the way, and we can armchair quarterback this,
right,
years later and say, well, I wouldn't have done that and I wouldn't have done this, but they did what they do. And
right.
So, that led us into, them losing comms and them getting in the fight. And, as the movie portrays it out, and, and then we got to go in and do the combat search and rescue on the Turbine 3-3 crash site, and then figure out what the question mark is.
What was going on your base with your platoon? I mean, are you getting word that this team is compromised? There are guys who are MIA. We might have to go look for them. Then you find out a bird went down. I mean, can you take us through a little bit of that?
So that morning, June 28th, that morning, we got up and we just did what Rangers do. We got up, did PT, went and ate breakfast, going on with our training cycle. We were going to go out to East River Range, which is just outside of Bagram, the little town of Bagram. So we left the base, got outside there. We're going to go do some shooting drills and just, have a good session on the range. And we get out there and start throwing the target stands off the trucks. And that's about the time that, we find out that the bird's been shot down. And, it was, hey, don't worry about what you've thrown off the trucks. Get back on the trucks. We got to get back. And there was a lot of guys who were like, what are we doing? And we didn't have any of the answers at the leadership level of what was going on. We just knew that we had to be back for something that was gonna get briefed to us, and as the situation was developing. And so then as we were rolling back in, we find out that the aircraft has been shot down, that team's in the fight, and we're just on standby at that point. And so I wouldn't really kind of understand the whole situation for, probably another 6 years as I progress through leadership. But, as I tell people, it's as a young guy, it's not that we're not going to get in there and we're not going to be a part of this, and but we're going to turn the tables so that way when we do recommit forces into this area, we've got so many assets to bear on the objective that nobody would be in their right mind to want to play. So, it was probably, about 10 hours or so after the initial shoot down that, that night as we're getting ready to launch, and then, finally got the green light that we're going to go, and we load up everybody that's going to fit on the aircraft at altitude and launch. And then we hit mountain weather on that night and have to divert infill and go sit at Jalalabad for a day, and then wait to get infilled the next night.
What was your understanding at that time of the situation on the ground?
The understanding was that the 47 had been shot down. There was no movement on that. ISR feeds were terrible at the time. I don't even understand how people could understand, what they're seeing on that screen. It was such a bad quality feed even then, and so we knew that the aircraft had been shot down. We were going in to do combat search and rescue on the crash. Murphy's team was still a question mark as to what's going on, because there had been no radio comms with them since Murphy's sat phone call. So the priority tasking was to recover the crash because we knew where it was, and then after that it would just be to figure it out, if you will. So
we interviewed Tony Brooks on the show before. Was he in your platoon?
Tony was in 1 Charlie, so he was the other half of the element that went up. So it was third platoon led the way because we weren't on the CSAR, so we didn't have all the recovery and crash axes and all the stuff to do that. So we kind of plowed the way, if you will, and we were there to kind of take the brunt of any contact that was going to be made, because we were just there to add security to what they were going to come in and do. And as far as recovery, that was 1 Charlie's tasking at the time. So that was where Tony was. And
okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's cool to get like some different perspectives on it. So then what was your platoon? I mean, you just explained what your platoon's role was, but then walk us through infill and getting on the ground.
So we infilled somewhere probably about 8,000 feet. It was what we could get to with the package size that we had on the aircraft. And so we knew there wasn't a way to land anywhere up there. So we knew it was going to be a rope, and it was going to be at least at minimum a 40-footer. And it ended up 40. And then as the rope drifts, it kind of goes 40 to 60 to, as it works out. And then when 1 Charlie came in, I know their rope started at 60 and it ended at somewhere around 80.
Tony said they just roped down into fog with like no idea of where the bottom was.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, the fog came in after we were already on the ground. I know what he's talking about, because it is just the way the weather was working. And it was one of those points where I never really, after a private, I never roped with leather gloves, fast rope, the work gloves anymore. I always did it in Nomex shooting gloves.
The hamburger helper gloves.
I never tried trying to take those gloves off, and always felt like my hands got so much hotter. And I had a platoon sergeant said, "Hey, just rope in your shooting gloves, because you don't have to grip the rope as tight. It dissipates the heat just as well." And he said, "Just try it on the fast rope tower." So I did, and that's a 40-foot rope, and it wasn't terrible. And then I was watching guys carrying 240s and stuff roping in, and they've got the big thick gloves on, and they're squeezing extra tight just to have a feeling on the rope.
Right.
And so then they're burning in, and their hands are getting so hot that they're blistering at still 10 or 15 feet above ground, and they're just letting go. They're like, "I'll just deal with it when I hit the ground." And when 1 Charlie came in, they had the same problem, and guys were falling off, and then they were just ending up in a big pile. And I know their RTO had his arm broken because he got stepped on.
Yeah,
and so you got guys that need to get medevac, but you ain't getting medevac.
Yeah.
So what was it like for your platoon roping in and getting on the ground?
It wasn't we didn't have any contact or anything.
Mhm.
And it was quiet, and then when the brownout cleared and all the, the wash of everything, and you kind of look up the mountain, you could see the crash because it's still on fire, still burning. And it's just kind of one of those ominous moments, if you will. You just kind of, the gravity of what you're doing has finally set in because you're seeing it with your own eyes and not on a TV screen. And then it just becomes the all night walk uphill through the nettles and the Scotch burn, or not the Scotch burn, but the pines and all the ground cover that's up there in the mountains. And it's just,
Were you guys, was there any intelligence that there were enemies on the objective or around the objective?
we had NAIs around the area, but it wasn't anything like uh, on the objective. There wasn't any movement on there, throughout the day or anything, and there wasn't any, people coming and going from it. I think, looking back at it now, is they realized what they had done and what was about to happen, and so they just kind of got a little bit of standoff, and they really were. It was to observe,
Yeah.
how we were going to take care of it.
Yeah.
And so, as that day turned into, a week to 2 weeks, there's at night, you see little fires on the mountain, and, get eyes on it as best you can. And then AC 130s dropping, 105s on it.
Yeah. So what was that first movement, that first night? What was the movement like for you guys? How long did it take?
It took all night. We didn't get to the top until about an hour before sunrise, and then we're sitting there on it, and then kind of listening to One Charlie suck their way up the mountain. And then One Bravo was still about halfway up the mountain because they had driven in from Jalalabad the night or the morning that it happened. They drove up the 90K in their trucks, and then they started walking from the base of the mountain up, and they didn't make it until the next day.
Yeah.
And only about half the guys that started to climb up the mountain made it up. The rest of them had to go back down and get picked up by the trucks, and because they just either heat exhaustion or twisted ankles and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was the next week to what did that set in motion for you guys in particular?
So what it set in motion for us was, priority tasking was to accountability and recovery of all, members of that aircraft crew, and then the QRF team that was on there. So that totaled 16. And so we got those numbers, kind of early afternoon. And there was a small clearing on top of the mountain. You could put a small helicopter like Little Bird on it, but it was, CDS drops for demolitions, and basically had to create an HLZ to be able to get everybody off that mountain, that, the remains for those guys. And so it was kind of was a good distraction, if you will, to do timber charges and clear that space to be able to make enough room to bring, a helicopter in. And so we just finished our regimental breachers course, and so all that old stuff, that timber stuff was still fresh in everybody's mind. So it was we're all sitting there trying to do the math, and the first sergeants are like, use the P method.
Yeah.
So we're sending tree stumps and everything up, like Roman candles. It was, just pack as much explosives in these little burrow holes underneath and launch it. And
Yeah.
So that was fun. We cleared that, and then we got to tasking for what would turn out to be go down the mountain and find Marcus. And so that started the fun of the mountain. Weather moved in that night and dumped on us, and we're trying to walk downhill, and the trail's a little stream bed at the time, and so guys are slipping and falling, and guys are trying to not fall off the ridge. And then we end up just for safety reasons, we end up spending the last few hours kind of huddled under pine trees waiting for the sun to come up so that we don't lose anybody.
How many guys did you have left in your platoon at this point?
We had split the force, so we had two squads in the PL's package. So, the platoon leader, RTO, FO were with us, and then the platoon sergeant had his, one squad, 2 machine guns, on still on the top and on the top of the mountain, and
close to the crash site.
We knew we were. Yeah, they were still up there with 1 Charlie and reinforcing them, and we're just kind of the maneuver element, if you will, going down and trying to confirm or deny what this push to talk signal was that we were getting, being triangulated down into this. I always forget the name of the village, so I can't ever remember it.
So you guys had to kind of like hide out, but take cover under the pine trees until dawn, and then continue to move down to where this, ostensibly there was a SIGINT hit that you had to go investigate.
Right. And so that was basically confirm or deny. Was it enemy recovered American equipment, or was it actually, in fact, Murphy's team, or, what the question mark was still for that. And that was kind of where we were at for the tasking. The crash had been accounted for, so now we're just trying to figure out, the fate of, this 4-man SEAL team. And so, finally pushed down in there.
Was it a consistent signal that you guys were going off of, or was it just like a couple hits and they're like, okay, around this general area?
No, it wasn't like a consistent, but it was like somebody just keying the push to talk, intermittently enough to get an orbital transmission to triangulate, where it was. And, so it was kind of confirm or deny what that was. And so, there was an SF team that was walking up that we tied in with, and then pushed back down into this little village. And then, as we're doing the Ranger smash through all the doors and clearing the village, here comes Marcus, from where they had him hidden and kind of stashed. And so, confirm that, and then start, doing the.
So they actually brought Marcus out to meet you guys.
Right. They knew why we were there. They knew what we were looking for. And so it was to, hand him over and then do the, the kind of the whole SF thing where they do the, let's drink some tea and talk and,
Well, what was that moment like? What was that moment like when you first got face to face with Marcus and confirmed this guy's alive? And what was your perception of all that?
I don't know. The big question, that we, the first thing that we asked was once, we went through the whole challenge and kind of confirmed that it is him, through the whole, POW, MIA cards that, we all fill out and going through that. It was, dude, where's everybody else? And then, he's like, they're dead. Well, okay, great. Not great, but, it's like, okay, but where? They're on the mountain. That's it. It's kind of that, you can't give me anything more. This, it's just started kind of a frustration thing. And I get it. He'd been, that probably wouldn't have been fun to come down that mountain the way he says he came down that mountain. But, I would like to hope to think that, if my friends were dead on that mountain, I could at least remember some kind of terrain feature that I could at least tell somebody that they're up here in this area.
And so what was the next step after that you had that initial questioning of Marcus? What happened next?
So then what happened next was, we just kind of secured the little village that we were at and, confirmed that it was him, passed up, over SAP that, we had him and we were in control of him. And then we just had to sit and wait for nightfall to come so that we could bring in the medevac bird and get him out. And then it just started, days and days and days of sweeping and searching this mountainside.
For the rest of the team.
For the rest of the team.
I mean, Did you guys eventually find the remains of those 3 other guys?
Yeah, we exfilled Marcus, and then the next day, we were sweeping the lower portion of this spur, and the other half of our platoon was coming from the top of the ridge down. We were just kind of meeting in the middle, and so after we had met in the middle and kind of traded information, and they got a break. They started to climb back up for the night, and we turned around and started coming back down to finish our sweep. They stumbled on 2 of the remains just by happenstance. Somebody lost their footing and slipped into a little wash and ended up, face first with 2 of them.
Oh man, that's rough.
And so, well, the rough part was is they still had to go like 800 meters vertically with, two sets of remains, and all we have is the old school poncho method to carry them up.
Right.
Because you couldn't do it with a litter, so it was wrapping them up in the poncho and kind of getting them up as best as possible. And they had to traverse them across the ridge back over to the HLZ. And then that was the hard part. Is after that, now we're just looking for one person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we ended up searching for, probably another 10 days before we got ripped out when 375 came in.
Yeah. And
at that point, we're 14 days, 12 days into this whole thing, and guys are just gassed.
Yeah. And I remember Tony saying that, the weather, you guys weren't getting enough water, that it was just nonstop for you guys.
Yeah, it was, from sun up to sundown, and then you got to, we're pulling security and small elements. And so you're not getting much sleep, and guys are getting sick with, dehydration stuff, or guys are getting, what happens, and you get a bad MRE, and then you got a little bit of food poisoning or whatever, and work doesn't stop. You just got to keep going.
Yeah.
Even though you've got a little bit of food poisoning from an MRE that may have spoiled, and you ate it anyway. And
yeah.
So,
yeah. So you guys get ripped out before you find the final body.
Yeah. And then, but we got ripped out, and then, so I want to say it was probably 8 hours later, that 375 had found the last one. And so we were happy that we were upset that we didn't end up finding him, because somebody else had to come in, but we were glad it was over with.
Right.
Well, you said you mentioned earlier on that there were things that you pieced together years after the event, because at the time you're a sergeant.